Welcome into the Pursuit of Manliness podcast, where we are vigorously equipping men to pursue biblical manliness. My name is Jarrett Samuels. I'm the host of this podcast. Men, as always, I want to thank you for stopping by and checking out today's show. If you're watching this on YouTube, would you click subscribe? That way you will always be alerted when there's new video content. And if you're listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever else you prefer to grab your podcast audio content, again, make sure you click subscribe. That way you'll be alerted. You'll be the first to know when new content is available. On today's show, I get the opportunity to speak with Jason Sautel, the author of the book Rescuer. Also, I want to encourage you, make sure you check out our closed Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Pursuit of Manliness. Men, it's time for today's show. All right, this time I want to introduce Jason Sautel to the Pursuit of Manliness podcast. Jason, thanks for making time today, brother, and being on today's show.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate you.
Jason, I've been privileged to be able to have your book, The Rescuer. I've looked at your social media, your website. You and I just, a really good conversation for the last 5-10 minutes here. Before we get into who you are and what you do, would you just introduce yourself for our listeners that may not be aware of who you are?
Yeah, definitely. My name is Jason Sautel. I wrote a book called The Rescuer. If you were to come up to me 5 years ago and say, hey, you're going to write a book one day, I'd probably laugh you out of my firehouse, that's for sure. But I just wrote it because I wanted to hit a group of people that are sometimes unreachable. And I believe everyone's reachable, but we got to step out of our comfort zones and, as guys, be tough, but also vulnerable and show folks that, hey, we really need Christ. And so that's why I did it. I also no longer work for the Oakland Fire Department. Unfortunately, I broke my back a few years ago and my hips, and I had to go through a bunch of surgeries and get pins and needles and all that put in me and stuff. So now I am a writer, and I never thought it would happen, but that's where I'm at in my life.
Well, one of the things I said just a moment ago is the Pursuit of Manliness has a lot of military/first responder guys connected to the podcast. I was just telling you, sometimes it's difficult to find really good content that really does get right into the world. And you write this book from the perspective of being a firefighter, a rescuer. And you talk about real early on, I think it's like page 3, that being a firefighter was, it was more than the adrenaline rush to responding to a call. Could you unpack that for us to get us started here?
Yeah, not a problem. So I'm going to start off, I wrote this book first person at a period of my life that was about 18 years ago when I was at the bottom. And I was an atheist at the time, and I actually could not stand you Christians whatsoever, okay? Because I was raised in a single-parent household with a Vietnam veteran dad. And when I became a firefighter, I always wanted to help people. I really enjoyed helping people, and it felt good. But the key word there was I was doing it for me. I wanted to do it. And it was a good thing, don't get me wrong, but if you really think about it, it was more like an act of self-worship because I wanted to make me feel better. So I was doing good things, but I wasn't really doing it for the right reason. It was like, hey, I was called to be a firefighter. I was given these gifts and abilities, and I now want to honor God by bringing them to people. So instead, I was doing it for me because I had so much hurt inside of me. It felt good to help other people. It didn't make me feel good seeing people hurt, like, oh, they're in worst case scenario. So look, at least I have it good. It wasn't about that. It was about showing up and just loving on people with my skills of being a paramedic and pulling people out of fires or putting out a fire with, having my brothers alongside of me that would courageously back me up, even though we were all going into a situation which was pretty darn scary. So that's kind of the perspective of how I was doing it back then prior to coming to Christ.
One of the things that you write early on in the book, you tell the story about going to school, and you correlate that with, the firehouse and stuff. But when you talk about toughness and vulnerability, when I'm reading that story, I'm thinking, yeah, I know. Like, I think oftentimes who we become is born out of seasons, out of adversity. You're not just writing books because, hey, I'm a writer, I'm bored, I got things to do. You're writing books because there's a purpose behind it, which drives your actions. Could you take us back to that, going back to kindergarten and that story of adversity and darkness? And I just think a lot of guys could resonate with this.
Yeah, not a problem. So that part of the story was, it was my first day of kindergarten, And I grew up as one of those leg clinger kids. I was really scared to leave my mom's side. So when other kids were on the playground playing, I would just be that leg hugger. So anyways, she took me to kindergarten, and the night before, she's like, "It's your first day of kindergarten." And I knew I was getting okey doked because she was going to drop me off and leave. So we get to class, and I'm sitting at this desk, and I don't want to leave her side, but the teacher says he's going to be fine and does the classic thing, walks mom out and close the door. Well, that's when the panic attack set in, that I was alone. I started freaking out, started crying. So rightfully so, they sent me to the office. But once I got to the office, there was a group of adults there telling me to calm down, yelling at me, and it made it worse. So what they ended up doing was clearing out a janitor's closet. They threw me into the janitor's closet, closed the door, and told me I couldn't come out until I behaved. And when I was inside that closet, it was horrible. I was in this world of darkness. But looking back on it now, because I couldn't really describe the feelings at the time, it was the first time I felt pure emptiness, darkness, evil, alone, and a sadness above and beyond what I was feeling from missing my mom. And I finally calmed down, but I didn't calm down because I wanted to be a better kid and behave. I just wanted the heck out of that closet, bro, because it's not like if there was a true devil sitting next to me or a demon, but you could feel the evilness when you're alone, man. And that felt there. And it carried on into my life, that darkness, as I became a firefighter and I was a young man. And it always felt the same, but it showed up different. And so it'd be like when I was home alone, horrible. Even when I was around people, I felt checked out. I don't get me wrong, I wasn't this weirdo and stuff that they could, I joked, laughed at the firehouse, but it was almost like I was joking and laughing through a fishbowl because there was something a barrier between me and the happiness I could feel.
Yeah. And that barrier you talk about, you found like joy in helping people who were as hopeless as you were. Hey, you tell some incredibly graphic and detailed stories, which are good for people like myself who don't know what that's like to run into a burning building or to see someone who wasn't quite able to save their child. And through the process, you develop survival skills. And I think we all do. We're all more broken. We're all more insecure than we'd ever like to admit. We all have a lot more things going on behind our eyeballs than we are often willing to open up and talk about. So in that season of life of that fishbowl idea, you have these survival skills, but that's exactly what they are, survival skills, because there's a layer that you can't get to. Walk us through that. What are you learning? What are you living in that season of life where you go, well, at least I'm helping people, but who helps me?
Well, yeah, I'm actually going to go into the book and pull a story from there, but I won't throw everything down. But it starts early in the book explaining about what it's like to be a firefighter, because I didn't want to make it a firefighting book. But the struggle was I also didn't want to water down what our job was about, so I was coming from a realistic point. And I'll be honest with you, in a Christian publishing world, they call that edgy, but I call it reality because I wanted people to see the true story. Because I think sometimes we can doctor it up and make it look like, oh, everything's good and we're going to be fine and stuff. I just wanted real. So with that being said, we went to a house fire, and being inside of a fire is really different than what most people think. I tell guys, put both hands over your eyes and walk into a house that you've never been into, so you don't know the layout, the furniture, but also make that interior of that house 1,200 degrees, and you only can work it between 3 feet and lower, and sometimes even lower when it's that much hotter. Carpet's melting to you as you're trying to attack fire, and you cannot shoot water through a window, contrary to what people say, because we will push steam through the house. So you have to crawl through, take your beating, make a hallway that's flaming to get to bedrooms and get water on the seat of the fire, properly put it out, and give whoever inside a chance. Well, on this particular fire, there's a mom and a daughter trapped, and the fire got to them before we could, and it just broke my heart. But I never knew how to handle it because that living in that dark closet, if you will, when something like that bad happened, I didn't know what to do with it, because every tragedy that I responded to, I picked a piece of it up and it just attached itself to me, and I had nowhere to drop it off. So my bag was getting full. Well, this particular fire, we go back to the firehouse, and obviously, holding a burnt, dead child and mom, and is just a horrible thing that you have to go through. And we had a neighborhood pastor who's, I mean, he's awesome, don't get me wrong. He would come by and check on us, but I was pretty rude to him because I thought pastors were pretty much, cowards and wimps, because they walked around with this book of fairy tales and tried to make everyone feel better with it. So he comes to that firehouse and, he was really cool. And he said, "Hey guys, how are you?" And he said, and I ignored him. And so he thought I didn't hear him. So he said, "Jason, how are you?" And he said it the third time. I turned around and I let him know how I was. I got in that pastor's face, started telling him to get out of my firehouse and, hey, if you want to do good for people and see how, you haven't earned the right to ask me how I am because you didn't go into battle with me. So go get a fire helmet, put a coat on, go hold a dead body. Then you have the right. And I was in his face, I was getting ready to cuss at him. And all of a sudden my captain comes up, he's all, "Whoa." And he's all, pull back. He's all, "Jason, go get your shower." So I'm leave, and I heard their discussion, and this is the part of the story that blew my mind, bro. So my captain, he's a man's man. He is a supervisor. He'll fight fire right alongside you, but he also knows how to do the admin work, even though he keeps there. Well, he tells that pastor, "Hey, you know what? Jason is a guy that you'd want to go to battle with and go fight a fire with. And he's also a good kid, but he just doesn't have anywhere to leave it." And you think, wow, that's really cool, this captain, but this is what's even cooler. That pastor says, "It's okay. I shouldn't have approached Jason." And I'm thinking, I cussed you out. I yelled at you. I was ticked off at you, but you threw grace at me, and I didn't even really know what grace was at that point. It was just something people, you Christians said before a meal, So definitely living in a dark place and stuff. It was tough, dude. It was pretty tough.
So how do you reason that you're an atheist, or you're certainly not a Christ follower by any means, and so how do you reason that when you look at, and I'm sure you've, as you're standing in the shower, as you're driving your truck, as you're sitting at home, death, there's either mortality and being on the cusp of it will either strengthen your faith or just continue to destroy it and rock it. How do you reason that, though, as a guy who's running into these buildings, essentially knowing people may be in there, but hoping they're not? Trying to save lives of people that, as you just described, you've never met, in places that you've never been. Does that make it more difficult as a non-believer, or is it easier to go, okay, if there is a God, what's the point of all this?
To me, it drives the point home that once you become a Christian, why everything from Genesis to the Indices is truth. And yes, I know it's Revelation, but by living as an atheist for as long as I did, and in West Oakland, it's not that our fires burnt any hotter. It's not that we had worse shootings than anyone else. It was just a compacted area. Our West Coast city is impoverished. It was built in the 1800s. It's just an old school city. So we went to the worst of the worst all the time, and continuously seeing that, trying to figure it out. I was using the wisdom told me. The wisdom being, Jason, you can do anything you put your mind, heart to. You can accomplish anything if you want. Well, that's one of the biggest flat-faced lies we can tell one another. I want to be so clear on that because, bro, you can see me, they can't. If that was the truth, I would be in the NBA right now making millions, okay? Because I want to. I would be on an NFL team. I'd be J.J. Watt right now, okay? But you know what? I don't have those gifts or abilities. But the problem being is I used that worldly wisdom, which I flat call lies. But, between believers, I can talk like that. I'm not going to be a jerk and say that because then I would sound like one of the Christians that was kind of being mean to me. But those worldly lies, dude, were actually killing me because I was using them to reason everything, and it never made sense. And what it basically came back to was, in a pseudo way, if I could do everything, I was God. I was my own God, right? And I could control everything. Well, I was failing as God, right? Now you look at it from a biblical standpoint, is because I knew nothing about, our mighty Father's will and stuff. So the worldly wisdom was crushing me and killing me. And it was like going into a complete circle and never getting out of it. And it made the emptiness and darkness in me that much worse.
Well, there is a redemptive part of this story. And I've said for a while now, there's been many a pretty girl win people to Jesus, or at least certainly get them to the doorstep. Right. And I'm a testament to that, to my wife, meeting her in church. And I said, hey, I need more of that. Whatever that is, I need more of that. And so certainly for you, there was a pretty girl. And that story doesn't, it doesn't start off with they lived happily ever after. There's a journey to this. So tell us about meeting who is now your wife. How did you start to see some grace and love through her?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm still looking for the happily ever after because I'm always messing things up. That's for sure. And, and but that's a whole other conversation for a future about, okay, I'm a Christian. I thought it was going to be all better now, but we'll talk about sanctification later on. But anyways, how I met her was my niece was out visiting me for the summer. And you guys, just because I'm a California guy, I'm not a California guy, but golly, I sure like sushi. Okay. So with that being said, I wanted to go have sushi. Being a single man, I didn't realize an 11-year-old girl didn't like raw fish. So she threw a fit and wanted to go to the popular restaurant downtown where we're at, which is the college area. And I'd been there many a times. I've dated many a girl. And I even had long-term relationships, but I always destroyed them personally. I'd tear them apart because of the emptiness inside me. But we had a server come up, and not only was she just so amazingly beautiful, there was something different, bro. There was the way that she communicated and just talked to me, asking me, what I wanted to drink and what I wanted to eat. It was just different, dude. It was coming from somewhere else. The beauty shining out of her physical beauty was coming somewhere else. So it was like the quote total package, if you will. Well, I was a dork back then, being a young man. So I would, somehow like open up my wallet to pay and there'd be my badge in there. Oh, you're a fireman, stuff like that. And I'm telling it, young men, that's not cool. But being a young atheist fireman and having pretty much everything the world says makes a guy cool and stuff, I had that. But it was horrible. It was actually it was killing me. Christy wasn't impressed with any of that. And she actually didn't want to date me because she thought my niece was my daughter. And she just wasn't in the market for a man with a child already. None of this bad. I mean, there's single guys out there all over the place, dude. And, our friends are single. We hook them up with friends all the time. But she just wasn't ready. And, bro, she was awesome. When I would tell her stuff, she would actually listen and absorb it and just return a love that was amazing, So yeah, it's definitely there. And I can tell you in a bit about how she took me to church too, because that's a story in itself.
Well, let's talk about that. But you talk about going to buy a Bible, which is more intimidating than most guys would realize, especially nowadays when there isn't as many Christian bookstores to actually go get the Bible. And you said, go big or go home, and you went King James. You want to talk about jumping into the deep end. Tell us about this, getting a Bible, going to church. What is this like for a new guy who's impressed with this waitress?
Okay, well, first off about the King James, I'm going to say this in such a loving way because, when I write a message, it does go out to 700,000 people. And what I've learned is the King Jamesers out there, I love you. You're going to heaven, but I think you guys have a country club in heaven that we're not welcome to. Those of us that read the ESV or something else. So with that being said, I love all versions of the Bible, but what happened with this particular deal is I came back from the firehouse and we had a super rough call where a little girl got hit by a car that was going about 60 miles per hour. And I was there first, and her mom was coming on scene, and I didn't want the mom to see her mangled little body. So I wrapped her up in the yellow blanket that we usually just put over a person to walk away from when we can't do anything. But I knew her mom would be there and rip the blanket off. And I didn't want her last memory of her daughter to be just the hideousness that I saw. So I grabbed the little girl, put her in my lap in the middle of a busy intersection, wrapped her in the yellow blanket. And when mom came there, I immediately had to tell her that her daughter's dead. And so her mom's holding me, she's crying. I'm trying to keep the girl's body parts together so her mom didn't see it and stuff. And it just was really tough, man. And so as the next morning when I got off my 24-hour shift, Christy was a college student. I went and had lunch with her. And during lunch, something happened that I never did. I opened up and I said, yeah, I told her the story and my filter came off. So I probably maybe got a little graphic too about it. And then I look over and she's crying. I thought, oh, great, Jason, you're you're messing up another relationship here. And she said, I told her sorry. And she said, no, I'm sorry for what you had to experience. That's what I'm crying about. She's all about the girl. Yes, I'm hurt, but that girl's with Jesus, right? And you believe that? And I was like, I don't have an answer for you. And a look came about her that I couldn't really figure out right away. And I can tell looks. I can figure it out right away. And I'm like, yep, she's going to dump me. Well, she says, hey, I get off school, then I have to work the night shift at the restaurant, but afterwards there's a coffee shop. Let's get coffee. So I figure she's going to dump me at the coffee shop. But I didn't want this to happen. So I had about 10 hours until this meeting. I went to Barnes and Noble and I looked for a Bible, and I went and found the biggest Bible you could. And it was intimidating as can be, because the nice, sweet lady in the Bible helped me find the Bible. She was a Christian, and I'm having to pretend I'm a Christian. Like, oh, it's so nice to see a young man, buy a Bible. And I'm like, yep, I thumped my other one to pieces. I need a new one. And she's asked me, where do you go to church? And I'm like, the one down the street with a cross on it. And she's laughing. And I'm thinking, dude, I'm sitting here lying to this sweet Christian woman. I just want to get this huge Bible out, go. So I get home, sitting down, and I'm going to find me some Jesus now, dude. I'm like, let's go through this. And page 3, page 5, what is going on in this thing called Deuteronomy? There was no Jesus to be found in this book I got, dude. I'm like, shut it down, and said, all right, no Jesus there. Guess I'm going to get dumped tonight, So that's how I bought the Bible.
Well, one of the tensions I think we face when it comes to understanding who God is oftentimes our impression of the influence or impact of our earthly father shapes the way we see our heavenly father. And so we kind of get this idea that, God is, and then whatever our earthly father was, which isn't fair to our earthly father and isn't fair to God the Father. But you have a defining moment where you talk about, you realize this woman isn't breaking up with you. This woman is there for you. And I think that's big for people to understand the love of God when they see that in other people, that they're not going to quit on you. The love isn't conditional. The love isn't based on how good or smart or good looking you are, or whatever. The love is something deeper than we understand. Could you share that when you realize, okay, this is a defining moment. She's not leaving me. We're in this together.
Well, first off, I just have to tell you, you just straight ministered to my heart on that, because the way you were talking about worldly father and heavenly father, I never really thought about that, even though I talk about it all the time, because my dad basically told me that Christians were stupid church people. And look where I was in my life at that point. So, man, thanks for that. I'm probably going to steal that from you, so I'll give you credit, okay, eventually. But with that being said, that night when I met up with my future wife, which I didn't know at the time, she sat me down and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, I love you so much, but I'm not going to date you unless you come to church with me. And she'd been praying about this, knowing the story now, she'd been praying about it for a long time and everything. Never once did she say, you have to be a Christian, you have to come to Christ, you have to do that. But she knew I was probably more than she could handle when it came to proclaiming the gospel message. But also she knew that she was in love with me, and she just didn't want to walk away from me. So with my wife, just so we're clear on it, she is one of the most sweetest, kindest, biblically feminine women you will ever meet. A headship thing, the whole thing. We homeschool our kids. We just, everything about it. But she's a tough cookie, bro. Okay, she's a labor and delivery nurse, and she doesn't joke. And so when she said that, she wasn't playing either. So she drew a line in the sand of, this is where it is. And everyone's like, okay, what's the great story now? What happened? And I'll be honest with you, that's when I said, well, she's hot, so I'm gonna go to church with her, and stuff. But it wasn't, just so we're clear for the younger dudes out there and stuff, it wasn't the hotness about, it was the overall, what was shining out of her, the overall package was what drew me to her. Because I hope she doesn't hear this, I've dated a lot of girls before her and stuff, but none of them did I have an attraction to like her, and stuff. So I went to church, and it was there where I heard the message that ended up changing my life.
Yeah, you describe it, the rescuer gets rescued. So So what's that like for you when you realized the only thing I can do is surrender? Okay, I've been put in a position where I am not God. I can maybe save people depending on the circumstances, but I can't save myself. The rescuer finally gets rescued.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I tell people. Spoiler alert: I'm not the rescuer in the story. Christy's not the rescuer in the story. Our Lord and Savior, God, Jesus, he's the Savior. But what happened was, the first time I heard the gospel message, it really offended the heck out of me. But it was said to me in a nice way, because I had a bad experience early on in the book where I was going to go to church and I got turned away because of the way I was dressed. And a few days later, I was actually probably about 30 seconds out from killing myself not because of that experience, but they didn't throw me a safety line, that's for sure. And they turned me away because of the way I was dressed. So I was real timid about going to this church. Well, when we were at this church, this guy met me out front and I had my guard up. He was really cool talking to him. Well, once we go inside church, sure enough, he's the pastor. So I look at Christy, I'm like, well played. That was so well played. And she didn't even know that either. Well, when we were having this conversation, the dude heard I was a fireman. He's like, I really want to be a fireman as a little kid. And I'm not trying to put my job way up here, but you hear that quite a bit and stuff, because the vision people have of what we do is really cool. The reality is sometimes different. So, but he was real, dude. That was the thing, is as a fireman, you can pick fakeness out a mile away. And if a guy doesn't fit into the firehouse, hit the road because, you're just, you're not a fit. But this guy just like fit. Well, after church, he made sure to meet up with me and said, dude, I want to go hang out with you and stuff. And we hung out, and he was so real. And we were sitting there talking. He talked to me at the level of a guy and not at the level of a pastor preaching down to a sheep, which I've always felt that's what it was like. And that's what he's all, dude, I need to be clear with you. And he did a quick assessment on me, which is a paramedic. I assess everyone I go to. Well, he did a spiritual assessment on me from a legit way, man. And he went a little hard. And he's all, check this out. You sit there and you tell me all these good stories. All, Jason, you're doing so much good for people, but you're not good, dude. And there's nothing good of this world. So everything that you're doing, you're basically doing for you, and you're worshiping yourself like this God you've been told you are your whole life. And dude, I didn't want to punch a guy. I'm like, bro, I've been burnt. Had bad things. And you're telling me I'm not good. How about go pound sand is what I was thinking. But I listened. But bro, it connected. It made sense once he it connected the dots of God, heaven, amazing, fallen world. Even though it was a lot to absorb, it made sense. And not too long after that, we had a fire where I thought I was going to die. And that was just like the final thing where it's like, bam, the light clicked on, So, yeah.
Yeah, the coming to the reality that we are sinners and we need forgiveness and that we're not good enough. We know it. We just don't like to be told that. And
Right.
we want people to tell us what we want to hear. And and I know the defining moments in our life that make us who we are as grown men, who give us the the push and the vision of what could be, comes oftentimes in counsel that is not favorable. It's oftentimes someone just telling you the truth. That's the guy you would want to run into a house fire with, a guy that regardless of the circumstances, he's for me and he's with me. He's going to do everything we can to make sure that both of us get out of here. The same is true with Christians. We should approach it with the same mindset. I'm for you. I'm with you. And if needed, I will drag you out of this space. Have you seen that correlation? I know now that you're not an active fireman, but that same mentality of what's in the firehouse is just as transferable in the Christian walk.
Oh man, well, I have 22 years of that experience to draw off. And what I say is I put my scriptural goggles on now to look back for 80, 90,000 emergency responses I've been on to look for the messages that God is there. Well, he left, everyone's, oh, God made you a fireman. I just take the theological standpoint of he let me be one, and he let me be there as long as I got to stay there. And so while God lets something happen and he doesn't take it away from you, he obviously wants you to learn something there. Hence, right now, these times we're in, I'm not seeing him take certain things away from my life, so I needed to learn from them. Well, with that being said, when I approach someone who is the walking dead, if you will, I take my paramedic approach on them. And the way I look at it is, in the medical world, if I walk up to someone who's having a heart attack and I misassess them and I give them medications for a stroke, I'll kill them, dude. Vice versa, the stroke and give them the heart attack medication. It's a bad thing. So you got to assess people. So what do I do when I meet a brother that's pretty messed up like I am? I first off come to him as an equal. I show up in the fire department. Our job was to show up, make things better without judging. That was it. We just showed up and met them where they were. There was no judgment. We didn't pull up to a third alarm fire trying to figure out how it started, right? We didn't show up. Someone got their arm caught in a meat grinder. Well, we didn't wonder how it happened. Of course, when we closed the doors on the fires, you're like, what was that dude thinking about? But you get it and stuff. So it's a non-judgmental, don't care away. So when I approach someone now, I assess them, dude. And I tell you what, there's some folks that live close to us where I didn't even talk to them about Jesus probably for a good 3 or 4 months. We just invited them over to hang out at our house and stuff, and stuff. Then not too long ago, I had a young fireman who I dropped the hammer on him because I saw he was at a point in his life he needed it, and I needed to clear the clutter out of his head so he could hear the message. And I went heavy on him. But if I went heavy on this other people that I just talked to for 3 months, I would have lost them, dude. It would have been like I gave them the wrong medicine. At the end of the day, what is the ultimate, medicine that we need that's going to fix us? Is faith in Christ crucified. I want to get you there, but I gotta take the path that I think is going to work the best with you, and then let God take over.
Amen, brother. Well, for guys that are listening, here's the book. If you're checking this out on YouTube, it's The Rescuer by Jason Sautel. How do we get in touch with? First of all, this book is everywhere. So if you buy a book, I think this book, it should be there, right? And then about your social media as well. How do we get in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. Social media, I have a Facebook page called Jesus is All We Need by Jason Sautel. And you can go to Facebook and find it. I'm not very good with a lot of the social media, but I try really hard and stuff. There's an Instagram account I just opened up. We're having to talk about that, and they'll probably see it somewhere from you how to get to that. But the best way to find the book is Thomas Nelson, who is my amazing publisher. They put a website together called rescuerbook.com. And you can go there, and it has all the different stores that's available. And any local bookstore, it's there. You can pick it up, or if it's not on the shelf because it's sold out, you can order it online. So yeah, man, you grab that. And I'm also on that Twitter thing, but you're not going to find me there a whole lot because those people are tough, man.
Twitter is a tough crowd, I'll tell you that. One of my favorite places to always get any book is Amazon, and you have it on there and all these other places. Yeah. So if you're looking for it, naturally, as I share this show, you guys know Jason will be mentioned, his Instagram, Facebook, wherever we're mentioning this stuff at. So yeah, get in touch with that. Really good website, easy to figure out. Got some about stuff, and again, how to got a free chapter on there. So Jason, brother, I appreciate you, first of all, writing this book, The Rescuer. I know that you have a new book, right? You want to go ahead and share that while we're here?
Well, yeah, that's the book. There's a future one I'll be working on, but the Rescuer book, this is the way it just came out on Tuesday. So this is the newest of the new right here, man. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Awesome, brother. So thank you for being on the show. Look forward to seeing what God continues to do through you and this ministry opportunity that he's given you.
All right. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for listening to the Pursuit of Manliness podcast. Make sure to leave a comment or question to keep the conversation going. I would also appreciate it if you would share this show with your friends as we seek to build better men together.